Pennsylvania in his car last Tuesday. Then I spent Wednesday there, and then I flew back Thursday. Um, I know some of you have said to me, "Well, what's the deal? I thought that your dad was going to be staying to February." Well, you have to understand that was a time that I picked out. I thought that was a reasonable amount of time that my dad was going to be staying here, but you know, you know, um, the thing is, I have work to do, as you know, including doing these shows every Wednesday nights, and the work doesn't stop just because my dad is here. And as I have reminded him a few times, that he's fortunate to get to talk to me and us go on fishing trips like we have and other things as much as we have, given that I'm not married and I don't have any children. I mean, he sees me, talks to me way more than any of his friends talk to their kids because all of their kids have families. I don't have any family of my own. So there's just, I think being down here, it might have been that he thought he was getting in the way a little bit. And, all of his friends are in Pennsylvania, and the things that he does are in Pennsylvania. And, a month, I guess, was plenty for him. So I did what I could, but I am a busy guy, as all of you know. And man, my nose is itchy for some reason. So he was here for like a month, and then he just decided, you know what, I'm gonna go home. And I think that he has this bad hip that has been bothering him for a while, and I think he was on top of everything else. I think he was anxious to get that looked at, and the only way he could do that is if he was in Pennsylvania. And that's exactly what he did. He went to the doctor on Monday. Of course, he is 83 years old, so he is going to have his own aches and pains. But his hip was really getting in the way of him doing anything. He was walking, bike riding. And so, he can be back there and he can get that handled instead of being here for another month and having to deal with that and just wondering, about getting it looked at when he goes back to Pennsylvania. So I've been back here since last Thursday, but I went down to Estero, Florida, to play in a tournament this weekend, and it played okay. And so now I'm back, and the work continues. So who else here? Concha, Katie, Heather gets in. She did not forget about the show tonight. Christine, Carrie, Laura, Jasmine, Ann, Kathy, Joe, Fishing, Susan, Karen, Michelle, Laura, and the woman that holds the wrench, and that is Cherie. So I hope everybody's doing well, but I thought I just needed to maybe give a little bit of an explanation, because I know I told many of you that he was probably going to be here through February. Well, we didn't even get to the middle of January. And, unfortunately, that's just the way it went. As I've said a few times to people, when it comes to my dad and I, we're very much like planes, trains, and automobiles. I'm a Neil Page type of guy, like All Business, as Neil Page was, Steve Martin's character. And my dad is much like Del Griffith, and played by John Candy. And we know that the issues that those two had in traveling in that movie, the contrasting of personalities, styles, the way they live their lives. And that does come into play sometimes between me and my dad. That's just the way it is. So there you go. Hello, Paula. Gail, Antonia. See some new names in here, I think. So I thank all of you for joining me. So that's why I'm here. I'm back by myself, not doing anything this weekend, but next weekend I'll be playing in another disc golf tournament. I have a few disc golf tournaments lined up here early in the year for a while, and then I'll be off for a month, and then I'll play in one, then I'll probably be off for another month again. But as you know, Unfound work comes in front of anything, and I've certainly been busy. Michelle says, "I love that movie, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles." It was on today, Michelle. While I was doing Unfound work, it was on AMC today. So I'm a big fan of that movie, and the reason I bring that movie up, that's one of my dad's favorite movies as well. So it kind of occurs to me that to use those two characters as a good example of me and my dad when we get together. Daraka says, "Found Unfound in August. I now have listened to every episode. This is my first live show with Daraka, or however you say that. Thank you for joining. Thanks for making some time on your Wednesday night. I appreciate that. Hello, Whitney. Whitney is in the house. That's funny. Also, some of you have asked me about what happened to the January 2020 newsletter. There was no January 2020 newsletter, and here were the reasons. First of all, if my dad thought I was working too much while he was here, he would have been even more disgusted or more put off had I also worked on the newsletter as well, because it takes a while to type everything out and arrange everything that I want to say. So there was that. In addition, I kind of felt like being the update episode came out the last Friday of 2019, I think that kind of covered any bases that a newsletter would have covered. I mean, anything that I would have written in the newsletter is included in that update episode anyway. So I did miss that one. It's a combination of, like I said, a couple different issues going on. But I can assure you there will be one for February 2020 in about 2 weeks. So some of you did email me, "Hey, did I miss it? It didn't end up in my spam folder. What happened?" Well, that's what happened. And I will be hard at it. Hopefully I won't wait till the last second to type it all up, because it does take some time. Nikki, it's addicting. I binged everything when I found the Unfound. Nikki says, "Welcome, Daraka. It's addicting. I binged everything when I found the Unfound podcast." I love hearing about these people that find the program for the first time. And of course, there's many, many episodes to listen to. And of course, the average length of an Unfound episode has to be about an hour and 45 minutes. So when somebody says they've listened to all of them, that is certainly something. Even if I know some of you listen to the program like 1/3 faster speed or something like that. I've been told about that. I can't say that I necessarily approve of it. But if you're listening, that's good enough. But even so, if you're listening to it at a faster speed, it's going to take quite a while to get through all of Unfound's episodes because of the amount of them and the length of them. This is not a 45-minute podcast like so many other true crime programs are. Unfound's episodes are usually at least twice that. So, Daraka, if you've listened to all of them and binged them, that you really put some time in. Thank you for doing that. Fishing says, "My mom is 89 years old, and I completely understand it," I guess regarding my dad. Thank you, Fishing. Thank you. Hello, Lisa. And Pamela, "Have a friend that needs help finding her brother missing since 2006. Well, you know how to take care of that, Pamela. Email me personally or contact my assistant Emily, and we will see what we can do. No problem at all. We'll get it done one way or the other. We'll try to do what we can. Daraka says, "I went looking for more information about Tammy Lynn Leopard." Yep, and that was an episode that we covered in August of 2017. Of course, my good buddy Anthony from Crime Blogger 83 was the guest for that episode. He's been on the program twice since then. He runs a great blog, and Durakis, I'm guessing that you've also been to his blog as well if you've been looking for information on Tammy's case, because his blog is certainly the best one on this earth regarding her disappearance. So, yeah, that's regarding the newsletter. So you didn't miss it. If you thought you missed it, you didn't miss it because there wasn't one. But there will be one for February in a couple weeks. There, Pamela, you can see Emily just a couple lines down from you. There she is. Yes, please contact Emily, and we will see what we can do about that. A lot of new videos on YouTube. And, of course, as you heard a couple weeks ago, I have a new assistant. Her name is Natasha, and she is the one who is taking care of that. She's working on both the website and this Unfound podcast channel. If you'll notice, the name of Unfound's space on YouTube has changed. It's now officially the Unfound podcast channel. And that's her doing. I'm the one that actually has to go in and push all the buttons and do everything, but she made that suggestion. But she is also working on getting the MP3 files of these programs, matching them up with pictures, and then uploading those videos. That's something that I used to do. She said that she wanted to do that. She's done that before. I said, go to it. And so she's been working on that. I don't know how far along she is. I don't know if every episode is up there, not up yet. I doubt that, but we're getting closer. So she is now doing that. So for some of you, if you want to re-listen to some of the episodes and you want to do that on YouTube with pictures that Natasha has found regarding the cases, then please do that. And she's also doing some other things, kind of with the logo, being able to put it in the videos, like down in the corner when the video plays. Working on monetization of the channel, something that we haven't been able to do because some of the early episodes of Unfound, I was using copyrighted music. There's a copywritten music. And so I've given her the outro and intro for the new music that I've been using since the end of 2000. Let's think about that. 2018? No, 2017. And she's going through and switching the music out so then the channel can be monetized. They will not allow you to monetize a channel if you are using copywritten material, whether it's music or pictures or anything else. So Natasha is working hard at that, and we've got some other things going on. What she's also working on is being able to advertise Unfound's books and other things either at the beginning or the end of these videos. As you know, we don't do advertising on Unfound. There are no outside companies that have their hands or dirty little fingers on this program, and that's the way it will always be. So if we're going to advertise anything, we're going to advertise the things that we do that benefit the program, that benefit our guests, benefit trying to solve these cases. That's what we do. So Natasha, in the process of monetizing the channel, also is going to be working on putting some sort of ad at the beginning and or end of the videos, specifically regarding the books, and that's something she asked me about yesterday. So let me go through here. Sharon says she has made my New Year, Natasha. Yes, Sharon, I think I know that you're one of the people who listens or watches Unfound on YouTube. Carrie says, I know Natasha's knocking them out like mad. I get tons of notifications about it. Okay. Lots of notifications there. That's what she's doing. Michelle says, I can help Natasha with photos for Brandy if she needs anything. Great. Michelle, great. And Sharia is talking to Michelle, yeah, regarding, yes. Kathy, all of your assistants are awesome. They are. And I don't want to forget, maybe I can mention this. This is something I did not. If you ever see me looking over to my left, I'm looking at my notes of what I want to talk about. Something that I did not put in my notes, and it has to do with one of my assistants, probably the assistant that gets talked about the least, and that is Dr. Eric Grabowski, because he's been on a special project for a while. He has he was in the process over the course of 2019 filing FOIAs for crimes committed in the state of Texas. That's all I can say right now. And I've talked about this a couple times on the update episodes. But in its regards, they are murders that could be connected to a disappearance that we covered in Texas. Hint, hint. And no, it's not Tom Brown. And he has finally gotten the information. The weird thing is they sent it to him in a thumb drive. So they sent it to him, and my understanding is it is now on the way to me. I gave Eric my address here in Florida. He lives and works in North Dakota. He's a professor there. And he's sending it to me. He's going to copy the information off the thumb drive for himself. And then he is sending me the thumb drive so I can take a look at it myself. We are looking for some very specific things. I don't know how much information is going to be on this thumb drive. It may be a lot. It may be nothing. It may be something in between. We just don't know yet. Eric, I don't know if he's taken a look at the material yet or whatever. But there's just something that we specifically are looking for. It's very, very technical. And that's all I can really say. But this is something that I've been telling all of you about for a while. Well, finally, we're moving forward. There's a lot of waiting because these were murders that were solved. The victims' families had to be told that we were accessing the material. We wanted access to it. My understanding is that Eric had to talk to at least one of the mothers of one of the murder people about what we're planning to do with this. I think he had to assure them that we're not looking to make any money off this. We're not trying to, glamorize these murders or anything like that. I think that he was very honest with her, and that's the way Eric is. He's always very honest. That we are looking for information in these cases that could be connected to something else, something that the police will never investigate. So that is what's going on, and I didn't know when it was going to happen. Eric actually started on this probably May of last year, May 2019. And that's the thing about this FOIA stuff. It can take a while, especially in a situation like this where these murders were fairly high profile in Texas. I'm not saying nationally, but they were fairly high profile in Texas. And, when you start asking for that information and people start looking, well, what are you doing this? Why is a professor in North Dakota filing a FOIA for murders in Texas? But I think it's finally moving. There was a time there for a few months there where nothing was happening at all. Didn't know if we were ever going to get the material, and really I don't know how much material we're going to get. Hopefully it will be more than just a little, because there's also some video that in regards to this case that is very important to us, and because the murderer, when he was being interrogated by the police, misspoke about something. That's all I can say. I wish I could say more at this point, but just trying to connect some dots on this, and in regards to, once again, this is related to a case that we covered in Texas. Um, that's all I can say. But I will tell you this: it's not Tom Brown. Of course, you can now gonna all go back and go through all of Unfound's cases for the Texas. Of course, Brandy Wells is one. Kimberly Norwood is another. Jennifer Wilkerson is another. You're going to be able to line them up, and there's a few more than that, maybe even. And that's all I can really say at this time. But I don't want to get too excited about it. You know, I don't want to ride that emotional roller coaster. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. We'll see if we can make the connection that nobody else has been able to make to this point. So we'll see. And if we can talk about it, if I can talk about it, we'll certainly talk about it. Of course, if we do find anything, the first people that I'm going to talk to will be the missing person's family about it. And then we'll go from there. But being that somebody complimented me on all of my assistants, of course, I think everybody knows about Cherie and Emily, Carrie, Heather, and then the new person, Tasha. But I do have at least one guy who is an assistant, and that is Eric. He was the interview way back in 2017 for Donna Mikalenko, and since then, he and I have continued to talk about cases. He runs a website, thecoldcaseweb.com. He's also professor of what? Communication. He's actually has his doctorate, but he's a doctorate professor with a doctorate at Dickinson College in North Dakota. And I've actually met him a couple times. He's from Western Pennsylvania, like I am. I think I've also told you, maybe some of you are new, he and I coincidentally went to the same college at Grove City College. However, I was there before he was there. In fact, the year I graduated, 93, was then I think it was his incoming year for his freshman year there. So we were like I was leaving and he was entering. But I've met him a couple times while I've been in Pittsburgh, and he's a really good guy, and he's really done a lot of good work for Unfound, even though I don't mention him as much as all of my female assistants, who I pretty much communicate with on a daily basis. Whereas with Eric, I may communicate with him once a week. All right. Maybe they'll get host cases. Well, that is convenient. I do good to get them in email. That's so exciting. Nikki says, fingers crossed. Michelle says, if it is on a thumb drive, it sounds like a lot. Well, we'll see, Carrie. We'll see. Of course, once I get the information and look over it, of course, I will be looking for all of my assistants' opinions on it. I will try to disperse it, and we'll have a good conversation about it, and then I'll be able to tell all of you, at least my assistants, what everything is going on here. In fact, maybe I'll do that later tonight. Thank you, Antonia. Fishing, I still love your show and would love to devote time to your podcast, but unfortunately, after I lost my husband over 5 years ago, I have to work long hours, so I'm sorry to hear about the loss of your husband, Fishing. Sorry to hear about that. I know that can't be easy. I know that my dad... losing my mother November 2018, I don't think, he's been, quite the same. And so you certainly have my condolences there. So there's that. And I thank you for all the compliments of my assistants. And I think all of the assistants are in here tonight so they can see all the compliments that they're getting, which is nice. Let's answer a question. I just got a few questions. And I'll start with Jill first, because Jill always asks a good question pretty much every week. Jill asks, have I personally noticed any difference in how police handle cases since I started Unfound? The answer would be no, Jill, but I don't want that to be a pessimistic view. I think that we've heard from many Um, I think your assistants would like to discuss this. We are going to discuss this later tonight after the program. Being that now that I know the information is coming to me, I'm going to let you in on what has been going on. But answering Jill's question, you have to understand something. I don't want to be pessimistic about this. I think, in fact, as you heard from Maureen a couple weeks ago, you know, she's been doing this for 15 years, and she says she does see a difference. I'm going to believe her. I think a lot of people who have been involved in this community even longer than she has will say there have been improvements. But on the other hand, you have to remember that when I'm talking to people about their own personal cases, is that we cover a lot of cases that are older, 20 years old, 30 years old. So, you know, we're talking, when they talk about the police, they're talking about the kind of reaction they got at the time. 1987, 1993, 1997, 2000. And so that's the way they're talking about it. And the problem is then in the modern day, their case is 20 years old, 30 years old. And you know, the police have virtually forgotten about it. Here's something I want to say about that. That is probably all that's probably always going to be true. And I hate saying that. That you get any kind of case, you know, a disappearance case, even a murder case that gets to be 20 years old, 30 years old, people have retired, people have moved in different jurisdictions, people have died. The new police officers coming in probably don't know anything about it. And I don't know if that part of it is ever going to change. What I'm trying to change is those initial days and what families should be doing, but what police should be doing too. Um, so, and when it comes to that, to answer Joe's question, I'm not sure there's been much of a change in the last 3 years. I think I'm going to say that it's probably been a big change in the last 30 years. I think as a community, at least in the United States, I think we're much more aware of children going missing. That's why we have Amber Alerts. I think that's, you know, with Silver Alerts for people who older people with dementia, you know, people with autism, we're very much more aware of those groups since 30 years ago. The issue, though, the thing that we still have a lot of work to do is that group between the young people, between the old people and people with disabilities, all those people in between that, the adults who don't have any of those, aren't that age and don't have those issues, those people in the middle, and that is where the biggest group of disappearances are. I think there's been a lot less progress made there. I think, once again, with children, with old people, people with disabilities, I think there have been a lot of positive steps. With just your regular, quote unquote, regular adult, not as much over the last 20, 30 years. That's my belief. And if we ever want to make a dent in the number of people who go missing, you have to make a dent in that group because that group is the largest. It's not little kids that go missing the most. It's not old people, people with disabilities that go missing the most. It's regular adults, regular. Now they may have a drug problem, they may be in prostitution, or they may be none of that. They don't have any addictions, they don't have any felonies on the record. It's those adults between the ages of 18 and 65, that group that I think that we could still be doing a whole heck of a lot more on. And I don't know how much progress has been made there. So I hope that answers your question, Jill. But the only thing that's going to change that big group is as time moves on, as the current crop of investigators retire and new ones come on, that those new people understand disappearances more than the people who are leaving. That's the only way it's going to change. Well, yes, they've got to get legislation for going some national loot for that 18 to 50 group. Well, the thing is, Nikki, is that sounds good, but the problem is we know how many people between 18 and 50, there would be alerts all the time, and I think at some point people would just tune them out, as would happen with Amber Alerts or any other kind of alert. So the reason Amber Alerts and Silver Alerts work is because they aren't happening all the time. But you come up, let's just call it a blue alert, that is going to be issued every time a missing persons report is filed on a 18 to 50-year-old. It's going to be a blue alert all the time. And I think eventually people will just tune it out. So we got to find something better than that. Carrie says, I think for progress, we need nationwide policies and nationwide training. For LA would have to be what they have is minimal. True. Michelle says, I want to change their first look to not be they all come home when they want to. The waste this way it's big as Lee's and time-sensitive things. True. And what I would say is it's not a cop's job to offer an opinion. Don't say things to people just to make them feel good. All right? Just take the information and go figure out what happened. Carrie says, that is the reason Amber and Silver Alerts have strict requirements to prevent overuse. Right. And how would we prevent overuse of an alert for 18 to 50-year-olds? Even if you really, really restrict it, well, there are going to be a lot of people who are going to be ticked off that their loved one isn't part of it. And that would just create problems within itself. Once again, because there are so many. Twinkle, people don't blame the elderly or children for having problems getting into situations, but they do think the middle group to be able to take care of themselves, but all people need help. True. That is one of the reasons that group goes overlooked. That's true. That is a public, Twinkle, that is a public perception that is wrong. It's true. We all know that's not true. But people who don't listen to true crime podcasts, they do something else. They take an interest in something else. They don't know. They don't know. So it's our job to try to change that perception, but it's going to take some time. I think you can eventually do it. It's just going to take some decades. So let's move back to what I had on my list. The Lisa Shuttleworth poll. We had a very interesting, as you can imagine, very interesting think tank this past Sunday night regarding Lisa's disappearance. Variety of different opinions on what happened to her, and then contrasting those opinions with what the group, and that's what the group in the discussion group, decided that Bubba, that is the guy who was seemingly married, but he was also seeing Lisa. There was a rumor that he had held a gun to another woman's head, that he does had some domestic abuse charges. As Cherie actually found out, you should know that Lisa's ex-husband, JT, the guy I talked to, he has an extensive criminal record, with some domestic abuse in it. Neil Durden, the old guy who gave Lisa a car, he has a domestic violence charge going back to 1994. So all of these guys in her orbit seem to have issues with women. But in the end, what the poll said is that a large majority of you, the public, listeners think that Bubba is the one who is responsible for her disappearance. I'm not convinced of that. I know Cherie is not convinced of that, just to give you an example. We talked a lot about Neil in the think tank, some of the things that were just maybe a little too coincidental to think that they were coincidental. But the good news is that, and although I can't say much, since the episode came out, a woman has contacted me who knew Bubba at the time, and I passed on her information to Ryan, and I hope that he gets to talk to her and they can start to maybe talk a little bit more about what was going on at the time of Lisa's disappearance and what this woman can tell Ryan about what she knew about Bubba at the time and some of the things that what he was doing and what he said, etc. So already doing that podcast, doing that interview with Ryan is kind of moving things forward just a little bit. We'll see where it goes. But this is why we do these things. You never know who is going to hear something and say, hey, you know what? I think that I know something. Hey, I knew that guy. And then the person will contact me or contact the guest. And then, we can start networking these people together so they can hash these things out themselves. Carrie says a lot of people get mad because their family doesn't qualify for Amber and Silver Alerts anyway, taken from someone who used to hear those complaints. Yeah, I bet. Carrie says, I plan to dig on James more today, but Flant ran out of time. We'll try tomorrow. Okay, Carrie. Cherie actually was Carrie. I'm even more convinced of my choice now. Well, I know you are, Cherie, and that's fine. If we knew what would happen, we'd just go solve it right now. I think they're all possibilities, but as you know, I'm leaning in one direction. Katie, I'm thinking JT is a good candidate. Bad alibi, failed polygraph, financial motivation. Katie, it's very possible. All I know is in the group with the evidence or the information that was presented during the interview that I did with Ryan, a large majority of people came away from that thinking that Bubba, James Harrison, is the guilty party. So there you go. Something else, and I guess this goes back to my assistants. My assistants have gotten a little tired of this show looking so yellow. And they're right. They're exactly right. So I'm hoping by this time next week, maybe even for the think tank on Sunday evening, man, that would be fitting. I'm going to be having some new lighting in this room that is going to make this look a little more professional than it does right now. I think, it wasn't so bad, I think, when I lived at my old place. Because, of course, you remember there was the big Johnny Depp poster in the background, and it had kind of a dark but warm feel to it. The problem with this room is that it's painted yellow, and the shade over this lamp to my left, it's yellow. It is actually an LED light in it, but it doesn't change anything. I've even experimented with taking the lampshade off. Doesn't make it any better. And there are no other lights in this room, and I don't have any other lamps in this place. So, what I've done, I went online and ordered some LED lights with some stands and things that I can put on this desk behind me, and I'm hoping that by, they'll get here tomorrow or Friday, and I'll be able to set it all up for Sunday evening. I'll be real excited about that. And I'm sure my assistants will be very excited about that as well. But they were exactly right. There was time for a change. Of course, with the YouTube channel getting more videos on it, and we're doing some with monetization and everything else, it's going to be getting a lot more attention. So we need to step up. We need to step up a little bit more. I need to step up a little bit more with some of these things. And so we'll see how it looks. The next time you see me, surely by next Wednesday, the videos will start looking different. And now, what are y'all saying now? Now that I've said that. Yes, Heather says you're welcome. Sharon says, we all live in a yellow submarine. Sheree says, just trying to help. We are here to represent the people. Thank you. How about trying to black light like back in our times? No, we're not. We're doing any black lights. I start using black lights, and I think people are going to get the wrong idea about me. Sasha, hello, I'm here. I've watched a few of your Unfound podcasts, and I'll be watching some more. I live in Ontario, Canada. That's my favorite province of Canada, Sasha, just so you know. Yeah, we all live in a summer. The people have spoken, Heather says. Carrie says, it's what we do assist, even if it's not fun requests. It was perfect timing for that request. It was perfect timing. I think it was perfect. Once again, going along with how the Unfound podcast channel on YouTube, where you are right now, is changing. I think it was perfect timing to say, hey, Ed, I think you need to do something about that lighting. So that's fine. We'll get it done. And as Sheree knows, Sheree was the one who presented me, hey, Ed, I think you got to do it. And I was like, you're right. Let's get it done. You're right. So there you go. Now I need to talk to Ghost from a fun topic to a very sad topic. And that is, I'm sure many of you already know that last week, Melvin Hufford pled guilty to being involved in the death of Teresa Butler. Of course, that's a disappearance that Unfound covered very early on in its existence, approximately almost exactly 3 years ago now. And Teresa's friend Amy was on for that episode. And he pled guilty to charges, and he's only going to serve 10 years. The maximum would have been 11. Now, if some of you don't know why that is that, by the way, get rid of the black dot over your right shoulder. You mean this thing back here? I can't get rid of that, Michelle. You know what that is, Michelle? That's a sprinkler. I live in an apartment building. I live in a high-rise building. And that, right there, that is a sprinkler. Sorry. Anyway, if you all want to, you're unfamiliar why this is happening this way, is that they charged Melvin, and what he claims happened on the night of Teresa's disappearance is that after her husband went to work, he and another guy went over to Teresa's because they were all going to do meth together. And in the process of doing this, Teresa overdosed and died. Melvin and this other guy got scared, so they wanted to make it look like a robbery. So they stole a bunch of stuff, took Teresa, stuffed her under a sink at a house that Melvin had or something like that. Then after that, he went to jail for a couple years. Her body was there the whole time. He gets back out, goes back to this house, gets her body out of there, chops it up into little bits and pieces, and disposes of her in a ditch sewer line somewhere out in the country of Missouri. That is Melvin Hufford's story. And the prosecutor bought it, and that's why he's getting 10 years. Here's what I know. Being that Jill, asked me the question about, changes, this needs to change. There is no prosecutor in the United States that should have ever taken that deal. Ever. 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 I feel the same way about Angie Yarnell's disappearance. How her husband got away with pleading guilty and only serving 4 years, even though when he told the cops where to find her body wasn't where he said it was. And has still never been found. These things should not happen. It is disgusting. And Melvin Hufford is getting away with murder. There is no way, there is not one element of his story that I believe. And really, the way I look at it, I would rather have him walking around out there a free man than him spend 10 years in jail for him getting away with a lie. Because this is what this does. It only sets up more lies and disappearances. That's all it does. Because there's no justice. All this is going to do is make it more likely that suspects are going to lie to get off easy when they committed murder as well. Instead of getting 25 years or life, they'll get 10 instead. It is a horrible, horrible precedent to set. Not just in this case, but for all the other ones that are going to come after it. So there is no doubt in my mind that Melvin and the thing is, you should understand, there is another guy. I've talked to Amy today, this evening. In fact, she might even be watching this evening. She told me what this other guy's name there, who was allegedly there, he's claiming he wasn't there. And he's not been charged with anything. So he's not even backing up Melvin's story. It's crazy. It's just, it's bad. It's just bad, and it's sad, and it's a horrible precedent. There is no doubt in my mind that Melvin, maybe even by himself, maybe this guy really wasn't involved, went over there to rip Teresa off. She got in the way. He went over there because he knew her husband went to work and she was alone, home alone with her kids. He went over there, thought he could get away with it. She got in the way. He was probably trying to rip the radio out of her new Jeep. She got in the way of that. He killed her, took the other stuff, took her body, and disposed of her right away. She was never under some sink for 2 years, and he didn't chop her up, and he disposed of her right away. You know why? Because he killed her. And this type of stuff doesn't make our job of people who are trying to solve these cases, it doesn't make our job any easier. It makes the prosecutor look good. It makes the sheriff, who Amy told me he's retiring, makes him look fantastic. Hey, look at me. But for those of us who are planning to be doing this work for the next 30 years or how long we're ever on this earth, it makes our jobs exceedingly difficult. Exceedingly difficult. And, and I think that this one kind of hits me a little bit personally because, the way I remember it, I've known about Teresa's Butler's disappearance since virtually when it happened. It was just one that, back when I think I was just like all of you, just a person out there, reading blogs on the internet and going to websleuths.com and doing these other things. Teresa Butler's disappearance was one of those ones that caught my attention. I don't know why. I'm not from Missouri. I've only driven through there a couple times. I don't know what it was, but it just caught my attention. And so I've lived with that case for a long time before I interviewed Amy in 2017. And so to now know that it's come to a close, at least as far as the arms of justice are concerned, and this is how it ends, it's just depressing. It's just depressing. And still, there's no proof that Melvin did what he said he did with Teresa. Zero. She's still out there. Her remains are still out there somewhere. And he's gotten away with it. Make no doubt, no matter how many years he ends up serving, whether he serves the 10 or he dies in prison or whatever else, he got away. If you can get them for 10 years, then that's what you got to do. I don't know, Sheree. I don't think so. I think this sets a horrible precedent where people are going to be able to lie to get out of murders that they know they've committed, take lesser charges, lesser time in jail, and then they'll be back out in the streets at some point in the future. Carrie, so sad but true. Yes, Ed, I agree. They minds mean well, but just give them a how-to book. But it's better than getting nothing and the family's still sitting in limbo. I just don't buy this story. To me, 10 years is better than no years, like we haven't so many too many times. But well, it's done. The thing is, um, her body could turn up tomorrow somewhere, and it's you know too late. Jeopardy applies. Antonia says judge was paid off. I don't know. Twinkle says too many criminals, too little money. How are you going to prove that in court? I don't know, Cherie. What I do know is that many of these cases go unsolved for a long time. Look at all these cases that are now popping up because of DNA. Are we not happy that those killers, if they're still alive, are finally being caught and thrown in jail for what they did? Are we not? Are we happy about that? In contrast to, let's say it's a case from 1975, the person did 10 years, and then all these years later, you find out that the crime was way worse than we thought. And that person's now walking around a free man again. I don't know. I just want people to be charged with what they actually did. That's all. The system is flawed. It stinks, but 10 years is better than 0 years. Well, I guess we'll find out in 2030 when Melvin Hufford gets out of jail again. Michelle, I know that's true, Carrie and Cherie. It just scares me to death that we are releasing murderers right back out to do it again. That is what gets me. We know they are murderers. Carrie, sounds like he was charged with manslaughter, not murder, and manslaughter carries minimal sentence here. I'm in Missouri. Yeah. Well, what Amy told me is that the maximum he could have gotten was 11 years. 11 years for telling a story that nobody believes. Maybe that's the part that ticks me off the most. That people would actually use that story as a way to sentence someone when they know it's a lie. That's the part about it that really gets me. That none of you believe that story. So it has to be that the prosecutor didn't believe that story, but he's going to accept it anyway. That's what makes people lose confidence in the justice system. When when the people who are supposed to be prosecuting crimes take lies and use it to charge people, when it's obvious that the crime was way worse than the person is saying. I I don't know how long a justice system can survive like that. I don't know. Twinkle says, "I love that DNA is catching up to criminals. Golden State Killer thought he had made it in the shade and did it for so many years, right? What if he had confessed many years ago to things and spent 10 years in jail and he would be out, and then all these years later we find out that it was way worse than we thought and he's walking around. Would anybody really feel better about that? No. It only feels good right now, with for some people with Melvin Hufford to know that he's off the street. But in the long term, I don't think that works. I don't think it works. No, we're definitely happy, but we are talking about missing persons cases and not murder cases where bodies have been found. Well, I understand that, Sheree, but you have to also remember something on the other hand is that the average age of a missing persons case we cover on Unfound is 20 years. Um, Teresa's case is not even to the average age of a case we cover on the program. So I understand. I mean, well, you're saying that Melvin should live his entire life and never answer for what he probably did to Teresa. Yeah, because he's not answering for it now. Because we all know that he killed her. He's not answering for it now. All we're really doing is just putting him aside for 10 years, maybe 10 years. Remember, these guys get out early. We're just putting him aside for 10 years. But he's not doing time for the crime that he actually committed. The truth is that, it's not just murder. It's, and I don't know Missouri law, but I know that places have it. If you commit murder during the course of another felony, it's like a double whammy. So that would have even been a double whammy for him. It wouldn't have just been murder. It would have been aggravated murder. Instead of 20 years, he might have gotten 30 years or something else because he murdered her during the course of a robbery. Instead, he's just getting 10. So, and once again, I think it's a horrible precedent for future missing persons cases. I think it's a horrible precedent. Carrie says we don't have that here. Okay, Carrie. So there's that. And Amy got to go into court, and she got to read a victim impact statement. And she's not happy with what happened. She also thinks that Melvin's getting away with murder, and the sentence is too light, and everything else. So, and she would know the situation better than any of us would, being that she knew Teresa and she's been living with this for all these years. If she's not happy with it, then I'm not happy with it. They just upped the class, so it went from Class C felony to Class D. Okay, Carrie. So I thought that I should inform you all of that. But for us, the case isn't ended because until her body's found, in my world, it's still an open case. It might not be an open case to prosecutors in Missouri, but it's still an open case on Unfound. That's why the program is called Unfound, not Unsolved. Let's move on to another question. Paula says, can families ping phones? We hear so much about the police pinging phones, but can families themselves ping phones? And Paula asked this. I think that's a great question. We have heard some about Google and how you can go into Google and it'll track, all the places you've been with your phone. Of course, families can do that. But when we're actually talking about pinging, of course, if you don't have an Android phone, or maybe some people still have flip phones these days, can families do that? I have to tell you, Paula, that I'm just not sure. I don't think there is a way for, I would say that if the person calling is the owner of the account, say a parent is calling about their daughter or son going missing and their daughter or son's phone was on their plan, and there might be a way to do it that way. But if it's otherwise, if a person just has their own account, I think that the police, for the pinging purposes, would have to get a subpoena or a warrant or whatever it's called. You have to file some sort of paperwork to get that information. Pretty sure. Now, we have heard of some families hacking the system. The one that comes to mind, I think, is, did Melissa Estes hack her brother Jonathan Estes's email account for his phone information? I think that came up in that case. And there were probably a couple others. Now, I know family members have done that. But the actual pinging and the actual cell phone tower that the phone was using at the time that it was shut off, or the person was abducted, or whatever happened, I'm going to guess that only the police can do that. Unless, once again, the owner of the account owns the phone that was on the missing person when the person went missing, and the phone is missing as well. Carrie says, I can answer that. If you don't have access to that person's find a phone, you won't be able to do so. Due to privacy issues, you have to subpoena. That's what I was thinking, subpoena. And Carrie says, yes, Melissa did. It's amazing how I remember that. How do I remember that? I don't know. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but how do I remember that Melissa Estes, Melissa Jonathan's brother, hacked into his phone? I don't know why I remember that. That's weird, because I've covered so many disappearances since then. I don't know, but yeah, she did that, and I'm thinking she's not the only guest who ever did that on the program. So there's your answer, Paula, and then to hear from Carrie, who seems to know about this a little more than I do. Carrie says, I can answer that. If you don't have access to that person's find a phone, you won't be able to do so. Due to privacy issues, you have to get a subpoena. There you go, Paula. I do want to talk about one disappearance that's been in the news, that's been solved, and then we are going to talk about Friday's episode. I want to talk about the disappearance of Harley Dilly, Dilly, this 14-year-old who disappeared, and then he was found in the chimney of the house across the street. Michelle says, it amazes me sometimes, Ed, we can recall in lots of times specific dates. Great memory. Michelle, thank you. Yeah, I'm surprised I remember that thing from Jonathan, that point from Jonathan Estes' disappearance. But Harley Dilly had been missing for a little while, and they found him in the chimney of the house next door, across the street. Now, you should know that this is a house that wasn't occupied. In fact, I read that the people who owned it only used it as like a summer home. They hadn't been in there since November. And Harley went missing. And it seems that what they think is that Harley was trying to break into the house by going down the chimney. And he got stuck in the chimney, and that's where he died. And it's just, it's just crazy. It's just sad, and it's, not something that could have ever been predicted. But I have to tell you that I've read about these kinds of stories before where people have tried to break into houses, or maybe they were drunk or high or whatever, and they got stuck in chimneys and died. So I can't say that Harley Dilly's, this incident with Harley Dilly is the first time that I've ever heard about something like this. Now, what it seems to me is that this was just... Did you see that press conference for Harley? How did his coat and glasses get on the second floor? I just don't understand. Nikki, here's what I'm going to guess, and I have no proof of this. But, I'm going to guess that Harley Dilly was probably, a young kid just looking for an adventure. Maybe didn't have any friends in the area. I know that, as a young kid, a 14-year-old, I lived out in the hills of Pennsylvania, and I'd just go out in the woods and, just make your own adventures, just walking around in the woods and things. It kind of feels to me like this is what was going on with Harley. I would not doubt maybe that he had somehow gotten into this house before. it wouldn't surprise me to find out that maybe he was using that house as his own personal place to just hang out, play around. Maybe they kept the electricity and cable on. Maybe he would go over their times and watch TV. I don't know. Being that nobody was living in that house and it was right across the street, it was a house from 1852, so I'm sure it, really looked different inside. And I think that this is just a misadventure. So far as his glasses and everything, it very well may be that he would got into the house. He knew how to get into the house. He was hanging around in there. Being that Christmas just was last month, he might have been thinking, hey, wonder if Santa Claus ever really could fit down a chimney. So that's what he does. Or maybe he tried to climb out through the chimney. This is the way so that's just the way I look at it. Just trying to view it, being that I was a 14-year-old boy at one time, and my parents would just say, you know what, Ed, this is before, I didn't have any video games or anything, before the internet and everything else. There you go. It's a beautiful Saturday in January, Ed. Go amuse yourself, because that's kind of the way my parents were. And I think that's probably why I work so well on my own as an adult. But you never know what kids are going to get into. And this time, it ended up in his death. Nikki says, do you see the press conference for Holly? How did his coat and glasses get on the second floor? I just don't understand. Jasmine says, yes, I've heard of similar stories also. Michelle says Nikki's statement is interesting. Heather, sounds like he pushed the coat and glasses through the fireplace opening when he was stuck. Heather, the flue was blocked off between the first and second floor. Hello, Jill. I answered your question already, Jill. I don't know if you might have missed it. But, Heather, that's what I'm thinking too. It might have been that he did get stuck. And he thought maybe by taking it, somehow getting his coat off, wiggling it off, he could make himself skinnier. I can't imagine it. I just cannot imagine it. Heather said his mother said he normally went to a friend's house when they had issues in the family. Wonder if he was going to that house and not a friend's. Heather, very well may be. But, there's what I read about it. There's nothing in this case that tells me that there was any foul play or anything else. I think it was a kid just messing around and, got stuck in this chimney. Just wanted something interesting to do. Once again, Christmas was just last month. We just don't know. Maybe he had been thinking about this for a while. Maybe he was talking to friends about it and just didn't appreciate the dangers of doing something like that and not realizing that you get stuck in there, nobody's going to come and get you out. Nikki, that makes sense, Heather. That's thanks to Ed, because as a girl, I'm only 30, and as a 14-year-old, I would never just look for adventure like that. It's still a tragic loss. Prayer for his family. Yeah. Nikki, it all depends where you grow up. I grew up in Gilpin Township in the hills, country of Pennsylvania, an hour north of Pittsburgh. And, I didn't grow up in a town. I didn't grow up in where, there are kids on the streets and things like that. That's not where I grew up. And so, you had to make your own fun. And I was very fortunate that there was some woods around my place. I had a dirt bike. There was a strip mine, and there was an abandoned strip mine not too far from my house, that if I took the back roads, I could get there. And, so there was, things to do, but once again, you had to make your own adventure. So, I'm thinking that was what Harley was doing, and it cost him his life. Jill says, reminds me of the Maddox case out of Colorado found in a chimney. That maybe, I don't recognize that name, but I do know that it's happened before, Jill. Michelle, when I was young, we hung out at houses being built after the workers left. Heather, I don't think think there was foul play either, but I also don't think his home life was wonderful to his mother's interviews. Yeah. Cherie, I was just going to say I had so many adventures. It's a wonder that I'm still here. Me too, Cherie. Me too. Thinking some of the places that I went on my, I had a 80cc dirt bike, and then I had a three-wheeler. How I didn't kill myself or something, it's beyond me. I just don't know. And then doing some of the other things I did when I started to drive a car, how I'm still here, I don't know. I really don't know. But let's get to, so I wanted to talk about that. I think I think we're going to have to take away from Harley's death is that it just shows you just never know what can happen in disappearances. You never know where people are going to end up, whether they're on drugs or not, whether whatever they're doing with their lives. A lot of these things are just unpredictable, and that's what makes so many of them hard to solve. Carrie says, hearing some of the things that happened to kids, I'm glad I was a chicken butt and healthy fear of my dad. Okay. All right, Carrie. Let's talk about this Friday's case. Unfound is going to take you back to San Francisco for what is now the third time. I think we first went there with Kristen Modafferi. You have to remember that Mandy Stokes disappeared in Oakland, right? Across the bay. So we had Kristen Modafferi, and we had Cameron Remmer, and now we have Jackson Miller, who disappeared from San Francisco on May 15th, 2010. This is another one of the San Francisco 5 cases. Cameron Remmers is one. Sean Seedy, Christian Hughes, and Chris Dickerson. Or Sean Dickerson, I'm sorry, Sean Dickerson. Are the other young men who are considered to be part of this cluster of disappearances that happened within blocks of each other over the span of 3 years. And Unfound is hoping to cover all of the disappearances eventually. Hopefully, we can cover the rest of them during the course of 2020. Jackson was at his family's home in Cupertino, California, and his mother left, and he told his father that he wanted to go to an AA meeting. Jackson, you should know, had some mental health issues that he had struggled with for many years. He was not an alcoholic, but he found that going to AA meetings helped him cope with his own issues and talking to other people, and he found those meetings to be helpful. Well, he told his father that he was going to an AA meeting. Father says, okay, go ahead. Well, Jackson never came home. They find out that there were no AA Alcoholics Anonymous meetings in the area at all for that day. So Jackson had lied. The vehicle that he was driving his family's SUV, was eventually found in the parking lot of the Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. And of course, it was presumed that he parked it there, walked out into the bridge, and jumped. But what they found when they got to the video of him, he pulled in there, got out of the vehicle, and walked in the exact opposite direction from the bridge. He did not walk toward the bridge. He walked the opposite direction. And there is no proof to this day that he ever did go out on the bridge and commit suicide, even though the people who have looked into this, law enforcement, in so many words, think that that's what he did. There is no proof of that. However, to educate myself regarding people who do commit suicide from the Golden Gate Bridge, I watched a documentary done in 2006 called The Bridge, where a documentary crew went to the Golden Gate Bridge, talked to the people who patrol it. They actually talked to the families of people who have jumped the bridge and died. And they actually set up their cameras over the course of like a month, and they actually caught people jumping off the bridge and killing themselves. This documentary is free on YouTube. I've linked to it on both the Unfound page and the Unfound discussion group. And I also linked to it on Twitter. Because I think to really understand this disappearance for Friday, that you need to understand what is going on there and how what they've done to try to stop these people from committing suicide, what was in these people's minds when they went out there. You find that a lot of them, they walk out there and they kind of hang out for a while before they jump. What you find out is 99.9% of the time, there are other people on the bridge who see the people jump. And so I think this all goes into understanding Jackson's disappearance better. Because I don't think you can just say, well, you found his car there. And you know, the truth is that it very well may be that Jackson could have been suicidal. The problem is that in the documentary, what they found out, these people who end up going to the bridge and jumping, it's not like they go and tour San Francisco first. You know, they go there, they go out on the bridge. Some of them do kind of hang out for a while at the bridge, but then they eventually jump. But nobody saw Jackson go out there. There were no reports of somebody jumping and then their body not being found. In addition, some people said they did encounter Jackson on the streets of San Francisco in the days after he parked his car there. The guest for this episode is his mother, Gina Funaro. And it was good to talk to her. You should know, even though we covered Cameron Remmer's case first, Gina was actually the first family member that I talked to regarding the San Francisco Five. I actually talked to her first, and then she was the one who put me in touch with Valerie Sorrells, who is Cameron Remmer's mother, who was, of course, the interview for that episode we did toward the end of 2019. But you should know that I've also talked to the mother of Sean Dickerson. I've also talked to the mother of Christian Hughes. And I hope to have both of them on the program during the course of 2020. I've not talked to anybody in Sean Seedy's family. I've been told that they've gotten to the point where they are very media averse. They don't do interviews and things anymore. But we'll see if we can change that over the course of 2020. I should tell you right now, my opinion is none of these disappearances are related. And in looking at them as I have, there's nothing that tells me that any of these young men went off the bridge at all. But I thought that just so I know what I'm talking about regarding the Golden Gate Bridge and suicides that are committed there, I had to watch that documentary and see how it all figured in, you know, to what my ideas are. Cherie says Kristen's disappearance is the first Unfound episode I used to. Cherie, I did not know that. Carrie says, I tried to watch the documentary, but you uploaded in the group. Too many flashbacks, couldn't finish it. It is heartbreaking. It is. It is a very raw documentary, especially considering that they have the cameras on these people as they're going off the bridge. It's just crazy. Sasha says, at the age of 14, I grew up in Ottawa, Ontario. Never been to Ottawa, Sasha. Then was certainly a different time in the 70s, certainly. Suzanne says, she watched the documentary, but it was difficult. Kathy agrees. Heather says it was a very interesting documentary. And Tanya says, I know you were looking for some help in California for the Remmers case. I live in San Diego, close to Oceanside, Carlsbad, if you need any help with that. Also was born and raised in San Francisco. No, well, Antonia, why don't you contact me personally, Antonia, and maybe we can talk about that a little bit more. Heather, can you do a map showing what is around the bridge? Sure, I can do that, Heather. I can do that. Yeah. Kathy says my niece and husband live in San Francisco. Okay. But that is going to be the episode for Friday. It's a long episode, about 2 hours and 40 some minutes, something like that. We really get into the issues that Jackson was having. You know, the ways that he was, struggling with his mental illness, and how he would be fine for a long time and then he would be bad for a long time. And everything that Gina and her family did when they found out that their car was there and that's where Jackson was. But I will say this right now, that there's nothing in what I've learned about Jackson's disappearance to believe that he went off the bridge. And I think that there's every reason to believe that he is still out there alive somewhere. But I do not believe that he went off the bridge. Maybe he became homeless and something else happened to him. I guess that's possible. But there's nothing that tells me that he committed suicide by jumping off the bridge and just wasn't seen by anybody. There's nothing that tells me that. So that is the show for tonight. Hour and 20 minutes. Wow, no wonder my voice is starting to give out a little bit. So, as you can see, I'm back home. Dad is back in Pennsylvania. There was no January 2020 newsletter. There will be a February 2020 newsletter. A lot of new videos on YouTube. Please watch them. Natasha's working very hard on that. We talked about the Lisa Shuttleworth poll. We talked about new lighting for all the shows that I do here, video shows. Talked about Teresa Butler. Talked about Harley Dilly. I took questions from Paula and Jill. Also talked about some FOIA information from Texas that I'm finally getting, that Dr. Eric Grabowski has been working hard on for a while now. And then finally, I previewed this Friday's case, the disappearance of Jackson Miller. And you should know, the title of this episode is A Bridge Too Near, is the title of the episode. And he disappeared from San Francisco May 15th, 2010. And the guest will be his mother, Gina. So that's all I got for you tonight. Hour and 20 minutes. I hope you enjoyed it. Absolutely. I think I already sent a message on Facebook a while ago. Well, I don't remember, Antonia, and I'm going to guess maybe that you go by a different name on Facebook, maybe. But do that again, and we can talk. But love the long episodes. I like doing long episodes too, Katie. But I'm going to say, I will tell Dr. Eric, Michelle, I'll do that. And you will all hear me on Friday, and some of you in the think tank will see me on Sunday, and I will hear and read all of what you had to say. Good night, everyone. Thanks for making some time for Unfound tonight. I deeply appreciate it. Good night.